Hey everybody, welcome to Sports Map HOU. I'm John Granado. That's Josh Jordan. You can hear us on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. You can also see Josh's work at sportsmaphouston.com. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet so you get all of our content here at Sports Map HOU. So Brian McTaggart tweeted out yesterday that Dusty's gone. We know that. Nice job, Dusty. He did really nice things in a tough situation, taking over after the big scandal and everything else. Dusty's on his way out. Now, Dana Brown is the general manager, but according to Brian McTaggart, Jeff Bagwell and Jim Crane are going to be making the decision with input from Dana Brown. Okay, so a lot of people are up in arms about this, that Dana Brown should be able to make that decision since he is the general manager, and they don't want Jeff Bagwell making decisions because of the way Jeff Bagwell made decisions last offseason when there was no general manager. My thought is everybody wants to run the Astros when, in fact, it's Jim Crane who runs the Astros. What are your thoughts on this, Josh?
It's something that we've seen for a while. It kind of goes back to Dusty Baker nixing the Contreras trade to where it seems like Jim Crane kind of goes with his field manager over his own GM, which is really odd. You would think it would be the GM that runs everything. I remember when Luno fired Bo Porter because he wasn't going along with the plan with the analytics and executing what they wanted, and now we have this deal where the field manager seems to have more control.
Much different though. Jim Click did not hire Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker is a baseball lifer as well. Jim Click getting his first job as a general manager. Jeff Luno was steering that ship all the way and hired Bo Porter. So it's a big, big difference. And, oh, by the way, it's Dusty Baker. And if it's a first-time manager here, I think you're going to see that everybody's going to have a lot more, including Dana Brown, is going to have a lot more influence on a guy as opposed to a veteran and old guy like Dusty Baker was.
Yeah, but I don't like the chain of command that way. If you're the GM, you should have carte blanche to make trades. It shouldn't be up to your field manager to tell you can't trade for Contreras because you think.
Well, again, he walked into that situation. That's not going to be the case with this new manager. Because because Dana Brown is going to be making that decision, especially if it's a first-time manager. You have power over him. They didn't have power over Dusty Baker.
Well, if it's somebody like Ausmus, I'm not so sure. If it ends up being Ausmus, then he might have more power than Dana Brown if that's who Bagwell gets in there. I feel like we haven't learned a lot from the mistakes of the last offseason. I went back and looked at some of these New York Post articles, that Crane, it was said, according to the article, was basically the one that did the Montero extension.
Well, unless they're tone deaf at Minute Maid Park, they will hire Brad Ausmus if they're tone deaf. If they're not, they're going to get a guy that is more analytics driven. Now, it's not like Brad Ausmus is stupid. Brad Ausmus is obviously, he's a really, really sharp guy, and he can read numbers. And I'm not sure that Brad Ausmus wouldn't use numbers, but there is an aura around this organization with Jeff Bagwell now in charge that it is incompetent. That those guys from that era are incompetent, and this era it has competence. So I do think if Brad Ausmus, there will be a backlash to the organization if Brad Ausmus is hired.
I think so. I just don't want to have too many baseball men. What you built this on was analytics. And Click talked after he joined the Blue Jays, and they talked about some of his background. And I thought this was interesting. When he started with the Rays in 2006, he worked on building out their proprietary database using his coding skills to put in as much information as possible. That doesn't sound like what's going on with the Crane and Bagwell situation running this thing. I feel like they need to learn from their mistakes. I think parting ways with Click was a mistake. Britt Strom, look what he's doing now. Letting him get out the door, look how much your pitching staff's regressed. I realized they were good last year, and he wasn't here then either, but he worked with a lot of those guys 2 years before, and maybe that's kind of wearing off, and that's why you saw a regression last year.
Well, there's all kinds of Sid, Mike Elias. There's all kinds of guys that are having a lot of success because they're using what they learned from Jeff Luna or what they learned in the organization. So, yeah, that is happening a lot. But let's not just assume just because Jeff Bagwell signed Jose Abreu and Rafael Montero and Michael Brantley that this is going to be a huge mistake. I think everybody thinks just because, Jeff Bagwell did those things that he's automatically going to screw this hiring up. I don't care who. If you want to know the truth, it's not about. Dusty came in. Dusty had never won anything anywhere, and he won here. You know why he won here? Because good players. That's why he won here. And you know what they still have here? Good players. And you know what they're going to continue to do here? Win. And when you got these guys coming up and you let them go and you get thinner and thinner in the organization, then you're going to start to lose. It's not going to be about the manager, okay? It's going to be about the guys on the field. And you got to continue to get really good players on the field.
I mean, that's obviously a top priority. And you're not going to get a lot from the farm system. And back to, Click again, he's the one that drafted Drew Gilbert. And what did Drew Gilbert get you? It got you Verlander back. I went through and looked through his transactions, all the trades, all the moves. He did some really good stuff for this organization. But look, he's not coming back. But I do wonder if they hire like a Spada or something like that, does this all kind of go away? Because it seems like people would be in favor of them hiring him. Do you think all the Bagwell, Crane stuff is just kind of silenced?
I'll tell you this. No, I think if it's an Espada or if it's a Council or if it's a DeRosa, a first-time manager, that there's going to be a lot of influence coming from on high. That Crane and Bagwell will have a lot more influence than they had with Dusty because of a crusty old Dusty. He was going to do things the way that he wanted to do, and those guys are not going to have that opportunity. So there will be a lot more meddling, I can almost guarantee you, with a first-time manager coming in here if that's going to be the case.